Welcome to the We're Good podcast, where we are celebrating the everyday brilliance of people working toward a more positive world. If you're looking for the good that's taking place around you, you've come to the right place. For 45 years, an organization called Doorways has been opening its doors to women and children facing domestic violence and abuse. 2,000 people in Arlington alone need crisis intervention each year, and half of those are under the age of 18. Today, you'll hear how Doorways continues to tackle this important work, helping survivors of abuse find hope and pathways to safety and success. Let's meet the folks at Doorways as we continue to share the good around us here on the We're Good podcast. This podcast discusses sensitive topics related to domestic and childhood abuse, which may be distressing for some listeners. We advise discretion and encourage seeking support if affected. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, please reach out to a trusted professional or contact a national hotline for help. The views expressed by our guests are their own and are shared with the intention of raising awareness and providing education about this important issue. And today we are so happy to be joined by the organization Doorways, and we thank both of you for being here today. Diana Ortiz, who is the Chief Executive Officer, and Joy Meyer, who is the Chief Development and Strategy Officer.
That's right.
All right. Thank you so much for being
here.
We really are so happy to have you here. As we said before, it is a tough topic. It is a tough issue that is going on all around us, everywhere in our nation, but specifically today, we're talking about what's going on in Arlington. So if you could tell me, Joy, about what is it that Doorways does and who do they serve?
Sure. Doorways, in short, is Arlington's response to sexual and domestic violence. So we have a full range of services for survivors of violence. They can call our hotline. They can come into shelter. We have housing. We have counseling. We have people at the courthouse. We have people at the hospital. So we really provide a wide range of services for about 2,000 households every year. And half of the people that we serve are kids under 18.
All right. And as far as the population that you serve, we do want to remind everyone we're talking about a very tough topic here. We already said our trigger warning, but please, take care of yourself as we listen to these stories, because we are going to just start with a very tough story. There are all of them that you hear, I'm sure, are heartbreaking. But Doorways, as you said, is that path to a new life and new hope. But can you share with us, when we talk about your population, perhaps some stories or some people, and we're sharing, we're not sharing any names or identifiers of some things that you've dealt with at Doorways?
Yes. So as Joy mentioned, our numbers are maybe something that an Arlingtonian might not think about, like 2,000 people in Arlington every year calling our hotline or needing services. And then actually for the past 5 years, we have seen an increase, almost double the number of survivors that need crisis intervention, like right now. They cannot wait. They need shelter. So one of our clients was in that situation, doing a very good, again, very well-paid job, very self-sufficient, but in a situation that it was escalating. It didn't start with physical abuse, but it started with a lot of coercive control, and she was at the point that she had no one that she can go to, because she was trying to still have a job and had a baby with her. She paid for a hotel herself, alone, isolated, really terrified. And the partner found her and assaulted her at the hotel. It was because someone else called that the police responded to it. And they asked her to call or to, have you heard of Doorways? And she's like, no. Do you want to come to shelter? No. And it took the law enforcement officer, and again, we thank our law enforcement and officers and partners to do this job, because it really took that person to sit down and explain what Doorways does, that she agreed to call with that person to us. And I would say when we talk about shelter, everyone may have a very specific image, maybe a movie that we saw a day of something that is not very home-like and nurturing. So that's probably like what our client was thinking when, shelter was brought up. But clearly, she was in high lethality. The severity of the injuries and the challenges that she was facing and the risk for her life and her baby was very severe. And she came to us. And again, she would tell us like nothing like I imagined. I was greeted with, like dignity. I had a place for me and my child. The children's counselor came and provided me with support so I could, secure a good safety, good quality childcare so I could focus on me and heal and recover. And, at that time, she was able to even find another job that was much more conducive to her being self-sufficient. But none of this would have happened if that person would not have sat down with our client and explain and invite her to call doorways. And that's what we see when law enforcement provide the assessment to survivors. It's called the lethality assessment program. And when they get a domestic call, they sit down with the survivor and offer that support to call doorways. Half of them have never heard of doorways or have been hesitant to reach out. And because of that assessment and that officer taking the time, they're able to get connected to us. And most of them get services after.
So that's why it's so important to get the message out.
Yes.
Right. As you were saying, there's no boundaries. And you would be surprised at the people that need your services. But you also have, a lot of small children and young children. And so I know you can speak to that, both of you. Joy, if you want to share just the amount of services that you have to cover covers a wide range of needs.
We do. And to speak specifically to the care that we have for the children that come through our programs, whenever an adult comes into shelter or comes into our housing program and they have children in their family, the children are assigned a counselor as well as the adult, because we know that in most cases these children have witnessed violence, and children don't process trauma the way that adults do. They can't talk about it. Talk therapy doesn't work for them. So we have children's therapists on staff and children's caseworkers on staff to make sure that that child is getting the care they need, play therapy, art therapy, movement therapy, to make sure that they're healing and they're hitting their benchmarks and they are stabilizing and they are also kind of flourishing in Doorways care.
It's amazing that you're taking such specific needs as well, and they get their own counselor.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. Well, we know that you all are doing so much and have done so much, and so we do want to talk a little bit about your journeys.
Yes. So I was called to Doorways in March 2020. I was not ready to leave the job where I was. I was at a great organization in the city of Alexandria, and I had seen the posting for this position several times and sent it out to every fundraiser I know, telling them, you have to work at Doorways. It's such an amazing organization. They do such great work. You really need to do it. You need to apply. And finally, my husband said, I think you need to apply. And I did. I got the job. The timing was difficult, but I think that the universe drops us places where we belong when we're needed. And being with Doorways throughout the pandemic has been an honor, and continuing to serve them as we come on the other side of that and have new strategies and new goals and new dreams is also really wonderful.
And with Doorways, you've also seen the evolution. Tell us a little bit. You came to Doorways.
Yes. So my first contact with Doorways was about 15, 16 years ago, something like that. I'm a licensed professional counselor, so I started at Doorways as the first part-time therapist that the organization ever had. And my job was to see as many kids as I could in shelter and in housing. And again, this is 16, something like that. I lost count, but I started as a therapist, just really trying to get as soon as possible services to those families and the kids that were, experiencing trauma. Since then, I moved on to more of like overseeing our all our client services. So we expanded, we grew, we added sexual assault services that we didn't have before. We got much more robust 24/7 services, and we're able to like fund with additional grants and again funding our mental health services. So right now, from a part-time therapist, we have a group of 7 that are doing incredible work, and all of this is free of charge. So a lot of good work, and again, starting from doing the direct work, interacting directly with clients and families to like support the teams, and in this position, even supporting much more the comprehensive services and ensuring that the agency is robust and stable, and we can do the best work that we have to offer.
And of course, Joy, we were talking about this is part of the population, but can you paint us a picture of people that you see, and would it surprise some people who you serve?
Yes, I have spent my entire career doing nonprofit work. I started with Native American housing on reservation land. I've done food insecurity. I've done homelessness services. I've done education. And some of these have very clear economic boundaries around them. They have very clear cultural boundaries around them. Domestic violence and sexual violence touches everyone equally. There's no formulaic about who experiences this or how. We have a saying in the industry that everyone knows someone. That's how pervasive it is. And yet it's something that we don't like to talk about. So thank you for having us on today. It's important to be able to bring these things out into the light.
Exactly. And of course, we would not want to have someone on to talk about this. This is not that type of, but I know that you are doing great work, hard work, but you have success stories. And I see your faces lighting up for our listeners who aren't watching right now. Can you share, of course, keeping confidentiality, can you tell us some of those stories that you see? And once again, we do want to remind people, this is a trigger warning. We are talking about domestic and sexual violence. And so just please take good care of yourselves as we're getting ready to share these stories.
Yeah, so I think as Joy mentioned, everyone knows someone. Part of what we know is that in a room, when we even go and talk about our agency, we know that whoever is listening might have a very personal story. Personally, that's something that happened to them, or like they know someone very close to them that was impacted. And what we also know is that domestic and sexual violence are some of the most unreported crimes. So even like when the statistics, we see like how pervasive it is, it's probably much worse because it's not reported.
Right.
The other thing that we see is that this type of situations thrive in secrecy. So thank you again for having us, because the more that we talk about it and the more that we normalize that it's not that something happened because you're not smart, you were not prepared, you didn't know. It's a dynamics of power and control that could happen to the most brilliant person. So we see it. We see survivors that, in this region, they may have a security clearance, they may have a very important job, and they are, they're being abused emotionally, physically by their partner. And they don't know who to ask for help. They're worried about, like how this impact their kids' lives. And they reach out to us. And all our services are confidential. And again, they're free of charge. And we really put a lot of emphasis on how discreet these things can be for them, so they can, take good care of themselves, take good care of their family. And most of the time, people that have all the opportunity to live their relationship with a lot of support, they do. And they can thrive. They can, bounce back, recover, get back on track on like whatever it is that, they have to put pause on it. And we see survivors so many resilient stories. Kids that are doing so well in school, survivors that can get the job of their dreams once they are not worried about their abuser showing up at work or blocking their finances. Survivors that can, start a new career because they were never allowed to work or they were never allowed to, finish school and then being able to be a good provider for their family.
Right.
So the stories are endless on how many good things we hear about and we see.
And people come at different levels, right? And so you will assess. So tell me if someone was listening and they think Doorways might be helpful for them, could be their lifeline. What is the process? And I know you get referrals from even outside sources, right?
We do. So it's really up to the survivor. We provide what's called trauma-informed care. And what that means, or part of what that means, is that the survivor is in charge of their journey. They can decide at any minute to take advantage of our services or to not, to come into shelter or just have a safety plan, to bring their children or leave their children with another family member. We even have a safe kennel so that if people are leaving their abusers, they don't have to leave their pets behind. We know that's a barrier. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times we ask people to start by calling the hotline. The hotline is just a resource line. It can get you right into shelter, but it doesn't have to. The advocates that answer the hotline are prepared to help people safety plan. So if they're not ready to leave their abuser, or maybe they're just not sure if they're experiencing abuse, they have a very qualified advocate on the other end of that line that can help people process what's happening and help people make decisions about what happens next. So that really, can range from immediately coming to shelter. It can involve or not involve law enforcement. It could just mean safety planning. It could mean just being connected with other resources. If you call the hotline and say that you haven't had food in days, we can make a referral to the local food pantry. So really, it's a good entry point to everything that we provide.
Would you like to provide that number now?
Yes, absolutely. And one important thing is that the survivor can call, but if you're a family member or a friend and are seeking support and resources, you can also call.
Oh, that's good to know. So it doesn't have to be the direct.
Yes, so you can always call and say, I have someone that I really care about, and I don't know if they're in a relationship that is unhealthy, and then our advocates will provide you with additional resources.
Okay. And so that number is?
Yes, so the hotline is 703-237-0881.
Okay. Say it one more time for us.
703-237-0881.
And we'll be providing that. Of course, it's on your website, which is doorwaysva.org.
And if you don't live in Arlington, you can still call our hotline. We will connect you with the right place for you.
That's good. And that's really good to know. Because as you said, there are no boundaries with this. And so many of our organizations also say we want to reach out and find help however we can.
We truly try to be our name. So there is no wrong door. You call us, you have a friend that you want to call with a friend, you go to see the court advocate. That way you can also access other services. There is no wrong door.
That's wonderful. Doorways to new things and to better things. That's wonderful. You were recently highlighted in the Washington Post. We're going to flip the script a little bit here to talk about your needs, as we've been talking about your clients' needs, but we're talking about your needs. And it's happened, to many, but you were in the Washington Post being highlighted for the fact that you lost $200,000 in your funding. It's a decrease, and those kind of decreases really matter. And Diana, your quote, I'm just reading it, was we'd love to help you, but can you wait 12 hours? If somebody calls in, if you're hurting for your funding, then time is what is cut back on that because of the services. So explain to our listeners, why is this time so important when it comes to Doorways?
Yes, so I think time is the essence here. And we talked a lot about the crisis response and how important it is for someone who's in need or is in crisis to be able to pick up the phone and ask for help. That's very brave. Yes. And we want to honor that. If you are able to call us, we don't want to keep you waiting, and we don't want to say no because there is no funding for having a shelter bed, or when there is no funding for an advocate to be able to answer that call. And we typically offer the example of an emergency room. If you have a medical emergency, you need to be seen now.
Right.
And I think that we've all experienced at some point or another, when we have to use those services, the urgency of how quickly we're seen, or like if we need to take our kids and if we need to wait for hours, or if we are able to like be seen right away and triage and tell us what's happening, how critical that is.
Right.
So our services cannot wait. And if I'm safe enough to pick up the phone, and if I am brave enough to like take the courage to ask for help, we don't want that to be a call that we cannot respond.
And the decrease in funding, is there a specific reason that has happened?
Yes, this specific pot of funding, it's called the Victims of Crime Act, and we call it VOCA because we love our acronyms here in Washington. But VOCA is fueled by the prosecution of white-collar crime. And once that well of money gets full, then that money goes out to the states, and then the states give it to victim services organizations like Doorways. So as that pool has gotten smaller, the allocations that come out of it have gotten smaller. Congress did enact a VOCA fix bill a year and a half ago, but it hasn't been enough time to catch up with not only what used to be in that well, but the expansion of need by all of our communities that get that funding.
Yes.
And you've seen an increase in
Yes.
need, right? A lot of our organizations have.
Yeah. So the funding has been cut for about like 50% now of what it used to be in a few years ago. And as we saw the decrease with, again, inflation and COVID, we have seen an increase. So it's going completely opposite directions of how many survivors are coming out and need services, and how the funding is decreasing.
So to help with that, volunteers, I would say, is that something that is a huge need?
Our volunteers are exceptional. Our volunteers outnumber our staff 2-to-1. We
Wow.
could not do our work without our volunteers. And at the end of the day, this is a money question. Mm-hmm. If our services are costing more, because everything around those services are costing more, and more people need help, and we're getting less federal money, we can't pivot and say, well, we're just not going to serve so many people. As Diana said, these folks are in crisis. They need us. And so what's happening is that private slice of that pie is getting larger. And in order for that to happen, it comes down to supporters.
Yeah. And you
Yes.
need the support.
Yes.
And I know you all do a lot of that. You're very good at your fundraising and your opportunities. And can you just share with us, like, some of the success, maybe just something particular? Have you heard something that just lives inside of you that you're like, this is what keeps us going? This is what are some people that might be interested in getting involved in Doorways? What's one or two things? I know you probably have 1,000, but
I mean, client-wise?
yes.
Yes. I mean, we worked with a woman recently who was in an abusive relationship. And, abuse takes a lot of different forms. It usually doesn't start with hitting. It usually starts with some sort of grooming, isolation, or financial control. Oh, let me just take your paycheck. I'll put it in our joint account and make sure that it goes to pay our bills, that sort of thing. And then that power and control just gets so severe that the physical violence kind of comes out of that. So we were working with a woman who really had some dreams of being a nail tech. She was trying so hard to get her certification and really wanted someday to open a shop, and just found herself and her daughter in this relationship with someone that did not want to see her succeed, did not want to see her be independent, and was physically and otherwise abusive. And last summer, she would spend some very long days walking in a park so that she and her daughter could be safe outside of the house. But she really felt she didn't have a safe place for her daughter to spend the night. It was really becoming a tipping point in her life. And really felt that there was no one that could help her. And she told a neighbor what she was going through. And the neighbor gave her Doorways hotline number. She called the hotline. We got her into safe shelter that night. She has been with us for a few months now. She's been approved for our housing program. She's going back to school during the day. She's working in the morning. She's working at night. Her daughter loves the friends she's made at the shelter. I mean, this is what we are here for. We are here to recreate safety, stability, and self-control. Have autonomy over your life again. It's amazing.
Oh, that's amazing. And thank you for sharing that story as someone who's still going through it. And that how you guys were able to just really give her that stability. Now, along with the shelter, there's also housing that you provide. You want to talk a little bit about that? And I really want you to talk about the prevention programs because that was something I was not as familiar with.
Yes. So I think that for us, housing is sacred. That's where after a long day of, busy work or difficult time, you go and you decompress and you get to do it your own. So we know shelter is critical, but shelter again is the emergency room. That's not where we're going to treat the long-term challenges or the trauma and the healing. So for us, being able to move as quickly as possible survivors and their families from shelter to housing, it's a primary goal for us. The less amount of time that you're in shelter and the quicker that we can get you, the better that we're able to triage that emergency room too. So it doesn't become, we're full and then what do we do with that next call that needs shelter? So we've been on a very strategic growth on creating more opportunities to get rental subsidies and the critical support that happens for survivors. So that comes from a very different, complicated way of funding that it's from many sources and a lot of private support to be able to provide that, pay that deposit, pay the rental subsidies until that person can get their nail tech certification and that they can get a job and then they're good to go. But we bring services to them. So as Joy was explaining earlier, we really believe that survivors know when is the right time. If we bring you 7 different appointments for 1 week, you might not be able to take them all. But once you're in housing, maybe that's when you really want to get that counseling and be connected to a therapist. And maybe that's when you really want to talk about your credit and your budget. So we'll connect you with the financial specialist. And all of those services, we bring them to you. So again, our work is reduce all the barriers. You can do it at your lunch break. We'll do it via Zoom. You can do it in your office. We have a beautiful space that you will feel welcome and nurtured, and we'll take care of childcare if that's the barrier.
Just thinking of all the different avenues, it's amazing, the scope. And also now prevention, going into schools.
We're in schools. I go to scout troops. I go to churches. We go wherever we're
Joy.
So yes.
I mean, you do the prevention part of it. But that would be challenging, I would think.
Well, we make it age appropriate. I think that's the key. Every person, whether you're 6 years old or 60 years old, know that your body is your boundary, right? Mm-hmm. So talking about consent for a 6-year-old might be, if you don't want to give a hug, you don't have to give a hug. That's something that they understand, right? Talking with a teenager about consent, you may talk about some different things. So prevention is really about teaching youth how to be respectful of one another, how to respect themselves. What are some indicators of bad friendships or bad relationships? If someone doesn't want you to see your other friends, that's isolation. If someone doesn't want you to go to your church, that's isolation. So being able to talk about those things in ways that kids can digest. We even have a new children's book that we wrote that we're really excited to get out into the community. So if we can stop violence before it starts and we can teach people throughout the trajectory of their lives how to have healthy relationships, we will be a step forward from where we are now.
That's wonderful. And when is the children's book coming out?
We have copies at the office. We just published. So I was at St. Mary's Episcopal Church this weekend, and we were handing them out. So
what's the name
really
of
good.
the book?
We Are Doorways.
Yes, We Are Doorways. Okay, we'll be sure to put that on our website as well.
It has been tested by my 5-year-old, my 9-year-old, my 12-year-old, and it's age appropriate for all those ages. They can tell you what Doorways does in a way that they can understand. And again, they understand that there's healthy and unhealthy.
That is wonderful. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
That is wonderful. And thank you for all you're doing. If someone's listening right now, and of course, we've talked a lot about getting in touch with you for services, but if someone wants to get involved with Doorways, just very quickly, some of the ways that people can get involved, because I know there's a multitude.
Yeah, there are many ways. They can visit our website, and they can reach out to any of us, and we're always happy to go and talk about it to their church, their group, their friends, their school.
Great.
There are ways that they can become donors, that they can join us at events, that they can sign up to be a volunteer and be part of the group of advocates that can be with a person and get in those darkest times to be there to offer that support or to answer the hotline or to be at the shelter. And they can work with us. What else?
Yes, we love being invited to come and talk about who we are, what we do, and why it's important. So if your company does a giving day and wants us to come out and talk about DV 101 or Doorways 101, we're happy to be there. If your book club wants us there, we're there. We'll bring a book.
It's all about spreading the word, because as you
yes.
said, there's a lot of people who might need you that they may not know you're there or what you do. And we just thank you for the multitude of services that you provide in Arlington. And thank you also for when people need you outside the area that you connect them.
Absolutely.
That is wonderful. Of course, a lot of information today and a lot of information on your website, doorwaysva.org. And we will be putting that on our website, which is we'regood.net. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
We just really appreciate all that Doorways is doing. And we'd also like to thank you for joining us today. As we said, all of this information will be on our website, we'regood.net, and be sure to follow us anywhere you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for being with us today. We're good, and you're good, and we can all make a difference.